Just having a look here at the head race air mixer. So, fairly simple shape overall. The only thing that really makes this thing as difficult is the way they've dimensioned it. So I've been having a bit of a go at this and trying to figure out exactly what they mean by these dimensions. You can see it's like on the side there. I'm just assuming that's the longest part of this piece. And we've got a 27-degree tapered cone branch sort of thing coming off. 400 OD spigot, 500 long. We've got a 4-meter long main tube, 20mm flanges. The rest is 10mm. And yeah, we've obviously got some holes in the flanges. And we've got another measurement here. So the way they've dimensioned this is quite weird. But we can make it work alright. I've just had to do a bit of experimentation to figure out a few things. You can see we've also got 80 degrees here, so let's get into it. So I'll go to a new sheet metal, and I'm just going to draw basically a side profile and construction lines, just so I can put all my planes in, so I can start drawing things on them. So I'll just put a line in, and I'm going to constrain it to the center point from the center of the line, and I'll dimension that at 4,000. So it's always a good idea to constrain to that origin point, because you can use it for assembly later on, and it just will help you in the long run. So there's another line coming back on an angle at 80 degrees. If we have a quick look, 80 degrees there. What I've found is the bottom of that line to here works out to be 2196. I believe what they've done here is they've either written a funny looking 9, or they've just just forgotten the moment or something like that. I'm not too sure, but it's the only way those other dimensions add up. And for these dimensions here, I've just got 80 degrees, and for a bit of trial and error, I found that overall dimension of that line to be 2155. Right, so now what I need to do is I need to draw some lines across to put my planes on. So what I'm going to do is draw a line straight up and down like that, and I'll throw one over here, and I'm going to center point constrain those to the ends of this line, and I'm going to make those equal because it's an equal tube either side, and I'm also going to dimension that at 2000. Now I'm going to get some points in here. I'm going to draw a line across, and another line across, and a line in between the two. So the reason I'm sort of drawing them all over the place is so I know they're constrained where I want them to be constrained. I want this center to be on this end here, and I also want to make sure that line is perpendicular to that one. And now I want to make sure this point is going to this point, and I want to make sure that's parallel to that. And same thing up the top here. So center there, and I want to make sure it's perpendicular. So I'll do perpendicular constraint. And one more thing here, with this one, I want to make sure that's equal to that one. Now, if you look at this drawing again, there's a 500 long spigot, so I'm going to make them 500 apart. And also, the spigot is a 400 diameter, so I'm going to make this one 400. and they're both equal, so yep, they both come to size now. Right, so what else do we need to do on this one? So I'm going to use another line, and I'm just going to go roughly there and center point constrain that one to this bottom point here, and I'll make sure that's perpendicular there to there. That'll become obvious later on why I need to do that. Anyway, I need to connect these to make a cone looking shape. There to there, there to there, and we've got a dimension of 27 degrees as a taper, so let's put that in there as well. And hopefully everything's stuck together properly, and yep, we've got our shape. So that's our overall shape that we're going to use, our skeleton. So have a good look at that and make sure you get all the measurements correct. Now go to finish sketch, and what I need to do here is I'm going to put a bunch of points in the model space here. So I'm going to use these. So I need one on the end, I need one at the top, I need one here as well, I want one down the bottom here, and also on the edge. Same with the story up here, point there, point there, point here as well. Now I'm going to work on putting my planes in that I'm going to use to draw everything up. So we're just going to make things look a bit easier. I'm going to turn on this plane that I originally drew on, the visibility, and I am going to select the option of angle to plane around edge, and I'm going to use this one to get a plane here, and I can go right click, repeat angle to plane around edge there, so I can select that edge and that one. And I'm just going to keep doing that for all of these 5 planes that I'm going to be creating. So there's one along that axis. There. So it may be a bit confusing to look at, but I'll turn a few off in a minute just to make it a bit easier to see. Right, so there's all our planes. So what I can do now is I will turn off the ones I'm not really going to be using immediately. So I'll turn off this one. Actually, I will use that. I'll turn that back on. I'll turn off this one, and this one for now. So now I'm just going to do basically a frame of what I'm going to be doing. So, right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw the basic shapes in there. See how I've got this side dimensions. So I'm going to start on this side because I want this to be all driven from my sketch. So I'm going to do a project geometry, and I'm going to project into that line there, and I'm going to draw a circle from here to here. It's all black, it's all constrained. You can see down the bottom there's nothing that needs to be done. Zoom out, I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to do this to the other end. I'm going to click on this, and I will just project the geometry. So technically probably didn't need all these points here. They might come in handy later when I need to rip it anyway. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off those planes to make it easier to see, and I'm also going to turn off that center plane, and I'm going to turn on this one here, And did that work? No, it didn't. Let's have a look again. That plane there, I'll turn that on. And also this plane. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to start sketching this one. See, it's sort of gone through the top. I'll just rotate it around like that, just so I can see that I'm drawing on the right one, which I am anyway. I'll project the geometry, so I've got this point and this point. So I'm going to draw a circle from this point here to that point there, which is fine. And now I can turn that plane off. And this side I'm going to do a sketch here and just rotate it around so I can see I'm getting all the correct points. See this construction line is what we're working with. So I'll make sure I project them just to be sure it's getting the right points. Do a circle up here, like that, all black, all constrained, happy. And the next thing I'll do is I will turn off that plane and I'll turn on the very last one we drew, which is that one. All I need to do here is start a sketch, and I can just project the geometry here because that's just that circle right there. So now you can see we've got this cone, but see how this circle, it's too big. It should only fit that piece there. So I've obviously done something wrong there. So I'm going to turn this plane off. I'm going to double click on this and edit. And I'll turn this around and see exactly what I've done. See, I've gone off the wrong center, so I've done the origin center there. So I'm going to actually just delete that circle. And I've got that point and that point. So that's what I really wanted. So yeah, sometimes it is a bit hard to see what's going on these things. So now I've got the actual center of that shape and the edge there. So that looks a lot better than the last one. So I projected the wrong point there, so that was my bad. So now I've got all the surface points, and now it's just a matter of actually drawing the thing. So I'll just collapse a few things here, make it a bit easier to look at, and I don't believe I need this on, so I'll turn this off. The original sketch, now we've just got all these faces, right? So what I think is the easiest thing to do is go to your sheet metal defaults, unclick that and put 10mm. And I'm going to go lofted flange, and I'm going to do it from here to here for a start. It should become evident why, but anyway, so I'm going to go diformed, make sure it's going inside because I'm using outside diameters, outside dimensions all over, and I'll just leave all that default. So there's one part, so that's good. So here's our branch as a whole piece without a cut for it. So the next thing I'm going to do is just going to go cut, grab that profile, and I'm going to go through all. And it's going that way, so it should be good. So there we have our branch, our actual shape of our branch. So that would be sitting on the top of the trunk there. That's just the way I'm assuming they make it. So when I do the hole in the trunk, I'm going to do it to the inside of this line here, so that it would be sitting on top of it, and you'd line up the hole, and the hole would match the inside of this thing. So let's go to another lofted flange, and we've got to make sure we do a new solid, diformed, this side to this side, if I can grab it, just behind the screen there, and that's going to go directly underneath that bit. It may not be too easy to see. It's going inside the line, so that's cool, that's where we want it. Make sure you got new solid on, otherwise you're going to end up with a joining all these bits together. So looks like it's going the right way. I'll just check again. Yep, that's outside. We want it to go inside. Okay, sweet. That's good. So now we've got our main tube. And one of the easiest ways I've found to do this is there is other ways to do it. I just want to cut the top of this. There's probably a much better way to do this, but the way I've found that's easiest and generally works for me is if I do open up sketch 1, I'll turn the visibility on at least, and I start a sketch on the same plane as the sketch 1, so like that. I just selected it from the browser here. I'm going to go slice graphics, and what I'll do now is I will project some of this geometry. So I want this thing to be adaptive. So I'm going to project the geometry, and I'm going to do these edges here. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to drag these out way to the end here as a whole. I don't actually have to do both halves, but I'll do both halves just to make it easier to look at. I'm going to project some of this other geometry too, because I'm going to use this drawing here as a bit of a guide. So I'll trim those off just where those finish. And now I can connect those lines there. That line to that line. Now this doesn't look like it, but it's a solid line because it's projected that geometry there. What I'll also do is I'm just going to grab these corners, and I'm going to make sure these lines are parallel. So I'm just going to form a big triangle. Now, like I said before, there probably is a much better way to do this. I'm just not aware of it right now. Sometimes shapes like this do tend to be quite difficult. And the last thing I'm going to do is just draw a line from here to that center. Now I can see there's some sort of dimension missing, so I may not have constrained something properly. So let's just go auto dimension and see what happens. 27 degrees, okay. So what I'll just do is I'll back out to where I was, and I think what's happened is it doesn't know this is parallel to that, and that's parallel to that. Fully constrained now, you can see. So now I've drawn a triangle inside my takeoff there, and because I've used all projected geometry, that will all be adaptive. So if I change the thickness of this or the position or whatever, this should all follow the main sketch. Now I've drawn that triangle, now what I can do is I can go to revolve, and I want to select the solid first, so I want to be cutting into this thing. So I'll go solid into that, and then I'm going to select the profile. Alright, so I didn't have it clicked properly. That triangle, so I'm going to revolve that in a cut, and I'm going to make that the axis there. So that's going to cut out my hole. So basically this branch is sitting on the top, so I assume you just weld it around there. That's just the seems to me the logical way to do it. So now we have the branch, and you should be able to see here that this is the inside of the trunk and this is the branch, so they should match up perfectly. Now I'm just going to home view this, and what I'll do is come in here, and I want to do one more lofted flange from here to here, but I may need to turn the sketch back on. So let's find the sketch that had the round circle on the top there, that one there. I'll put visibility back on, and I'll go sheet metal, lofted flange from that to that, die formed, make sure it's going internal, so the other way, new solid. I want all these to be new solids, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to split them up at the end for an assembly, and that way it should be easier to get all the flat patterns and everything. So there we go. So now we've got these three solids. So what I can actually do now is I can do the flange. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to turn off that sketch. Turn off the sketches that I don't want to see. It's definitely worth doing this as you go. It can get quite confusing when you've got a lot of things going on. I don't actually need to see this one either. And even if I like, I can just hold shift and turn off visibility for these. There we go. So now I've got no points bothering me either. Now I'll just start a sketch, and I'll just start it on the end face here. And I will project the geometry of the inside. And I'm just going to draw a circle from the same center point at 2200. And I'll just check that. So we had 2200 OD of this flange, which is fine. Now I need to draw my circle, which we're going to have to make a pattern of. So there's a 30mm circle. I'm going to make sure it's constrained vertically to that center point. It doesn't always put them in, so it's vertical there. Sometimes it may move on you, and you might find that your actual orientations are in the wrong way. So don't be worried about that. Just go back out and put horizontal, or just turn your view around. Another thing I'm going to do here is just a good habit. I'm going to do construction line, circle here to the center, and I'm just going to dimension that at 2100. So obviously you can just put dimensions in there if you like. To dimension where that is, I just like to put a center line in there. It just makes it nice and easy to see, and you can just put the diameter on there, so it's just a little bit easier. Now we need 24 of these holes. Let's just double check that. 24 at 30, 2100 PCD. So let's just do a circular pattern here. I'll select that circle, and I'll select that center point as the axis, and I'll just put 24 like so. Finish that sketch, and I'll look at it from the side. Now I'm just going to do a 3D model, extrude, select that face, make sure it's going the right way, and 20mm, not 10. And you also got to make sure it's a new solid, so we don't want it to be attached to this part here. So make sure you're on new solid, and you should be able to go okay. So now we've got another solid here, and same thing on this end. So I'm just going to start a sketch on this end, and all I need to do here is go project geometry there. Same thing again, extrude, make sure it's 20mm, make sure it's a new solid, and make sure it's going the right way. Make sure it's not cutting into it, so it's coming out. You can see the arrow there. Okay, so now we've got our two flanges. Right, so now it's all drawn up. What we want to do is we want to be able to make patterns out of it. So I find the easiest way for me to do that is to go back to sheet metal, and I can start a sketch on say XZ plane, And I'll go slice graphics so I can see. Also, I'll project the geometry, so the ends of this tube here. And center point rectangle up there. And I'll go right out to the end. And I'll dimension that there of 0.1 millimeters. And I'll finish that sketch there. So all I'm doing with this one is I'm just going to do a cut through this main pipe here. You can use the rip function. Sometimes that works really well, sometimes it's a bit difficult. I find that if you're doing a complex shape, it can be a bit more hassle than it's worth, so you just use the cut feature. So anyway, if I grab this solid, I'll grab this solid and I'll go all in that direction. Just put a nice cut right through that bit there. Now, what we can do now is we can do the same for these two bits. So let's just do the same sort of thing for this one. So what I want to do is I want to find, say, the mid-plane. Or what I can actually do here is I can get the sketch back up, which I made this from. The original sketch actually. Turn the visibility back on. And I'll do a plane angle to plane around the edge again. And if you hover over it, then that sketch will show up. So I've highlighted that line, and now I'm going to do it angle to this one at 90 degrees. So I'm going to use this plane to cut this one here. You can see the shortest length is on this side, so I'm going to do it that way. So I'll start a sketch on this one, and I'll right click, slice graphics again, just so I can see what's going on. And I'll project some geometry here. So I want it to go at least to the top of this cone, so I'll make sure that top line is highlighted there. And I'll just do it to the center point there as well. So center point rectangle, let's put it roughly there, and I'll draw it out. Now what I'll do is I'll do a horizontal constraint from there to that point. I'll back that up actually, because it's round the wrong way. I'll do a vertical constraint from that point to that point. And I'll give this a dimension. Oops, I'll do another vertical constraint from that point to that line I just projected before. I'll give this a dimension here to here of 0.1. So I'm just using 0.1 as a very small cut. And I'll do a horizontal here to the origin there. So just reminder, just make sure sometimes horizontal and vertical are around a different way than what you think. So I'll finish that sketch, and now what I'm going to do is the same thing again. I'll do cut. I'll make sure I've got the bit I want to cut as my solid, and I'll go all, and I'll check what way it's going. Right now it doesn't look like it's selected, so I'll just zoom into it. Make sure it's grabbed. I believe it is. So all, I can't actually see what way it's going here. Oh, there we go. Now we've got an arrow. So it was sort of hiding. So I'm going to go out the short side of it, because I'm going to assume that you'd want to weld it in the shortest face. So that is actually cut there. It's just you can't see it with everything on. You can see that cut line there. So I'll turn that visibility of that sketch off again, just so we can see that better. There we go, we've got our cut line out this way. And just to keep it all the same, I'm just going to put a cut line along here. So it might be worth just checking. So it's a simple cylinder, we can turn a plane on like this, and we can do a point. So we can grab the outside, and grab the plane first generally. then the outside of the circle. I'm just going to turn that off again. So we've got that point there. Now we should be able to use the rip command for that one. So grab rip, do that, grab the that surface and that point both ways from that line, and I'll do 0.1 again. So just 0.1, just because I don't know how these things are going to be joined. Obviously, if you knew you needed a gap or something for a butt weld, you'd put a gap in there. And I'll turn that point off just to make it look nice again. And another thing we can do at this point is just collapse everything here, tidy it up, go to File and Properties, Physical. So we can do generic, we can find steel mold. So this thing did say it was steel mold, so we apply that. And there you go, it looks a bit better. So now we've got this whole thing. I'm going to save this part. So you can see down here, it's an IPT. So now we've got this all saved as an IPT. What I can do is go to Manage and Make Components. So I can drop down here in a template. I'm just going to use my standard millimeter IAM. And I'll drag that over, and I'm just going to select each and every part. You can see it highlights green, 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 and I'll go next. And so you can go through and name all these bits. It's probably a good idea really, but I'm not going to bother for this, and I'll just put these all into sheet metal parts. It doesn't really matter for the flanges, it's just the same thing anyway. And file location, source path, so that should be fine. And we'll go apply. So you can see it's gone to that file. So now you can see what's happened is it's opened up as an IAM next to it. So what we can do is close the original. And now we've got an IAM. So what I'll do here, just to make life a bit easier, is I'll go View and Shaded with Edges. Now that brings up all the seams and whatnot. So I'll just save that. And it's just going to make sure everything saves good. Give that a minute. Now we can do our flat patterns. So I'm going to double click on the center part and create a flat pattern. So there's our flat pattern for the main tube, and the seams obviously down the middle where the joint is. Another thing we can do from here is we can click on that, and we can right click, and we could export that as a DXF if you want. If you want to use a DXF for anything, I don't need to, so I'm not going to. So if I go to the folded part, and now I'll just go Control S, save that one. You see it's sort of opened up in its own box, which is fine. And now we can do the same with this bit. So I've got the same thing there, we've got a pattern for that one. And I'll save that, close out. And lastly, I'll do the spigot. So I'll create a flat pattern for that. And I'll go to the folded part. Important thing to remember here is these flat patterns, you need to generate them. And if you do change any of the dimensions, you need to go back and go to flat pattern again, otherwise they may not update. Sometimes they're not very good at that sort of thing. I'll close out of that and I'll save this. Now we have a complete assembly with flat patterns. So we can go to the flat pattern. There's a flat pattern for that part. You see it opens them all up as we go again. Yeah, so there it is. Tidy up the side here. Save it. And that's the head race air mixer.